Vanessa Ziino, welcome to the Will to Win podcast. It's so great to have you on the show.
It's so lovely to be here.
And we've had some interesting conversations about money and how to save money and how to, succeed financially. Because in this current, generation, a lot of people are struggling financially.
Definitely.
And they're looking for ways to save money and be able to, have more financial stability. I mean, it's not just about being wealthy. It's about being able to have enough money to live a normal life and pay for the things that you need so that you can be happy, you can feel free and independent. So you've got, I just wanted to sort of share with my audience about your background. And so you're a qualified accountant, financial strategist, and creator, helping a new generation rethink the way they relate to money. She teaches people that wealth isn't just about numbers. It's about mindset, peace, and designing an intentional life. Vanessa believes that true financial freedom comes not from hustle or deprivation, but from clarity, confidence, and systems that support the life you choose to live. In a world where money can easily become a source of anxiety and comparison, Vanessa reframes wealth as a foundation for peace, growth, and optionality. She blends financial strategy with human psychology so her audience can learn how to calm their money stress, understand their numbers deeply, and build long-term stability without sacrificing joy now. Wow.
Thank you for that introduction.
What an introduction that was. You have got quite a lot of experience behind you.
Definitely, I try. And I think a big part of developing that experience over time is being able to share it with our audience. I think a lot of us grow up without the tools to build our financial literacy, and then we become adults and we don't have the basics understood. So something I'm really passionate about is sharing some of my knowledge with the rest of the world. Yes, I'm so excited to be here and share a little bit of my thoughts around how money can be a bit less stressful.
Because there's no doubt money can be really stressful, and deciding where you put your money can be challenging. And yeah, it's really important to be able to prioritize where your money goes and how you manage it. So that being said, I wanted to ask you, just think back to when you were younger, what was it that your parents taught you about money and how you should go about managing it?
That is such a good question, because a lot of the way that we feel about money as an adult stems from our experiences and the messages we were given when we were a child. For me personally, money felt quite scarce growing up. A lot of us heard the saying, money doesn't grow on trees. And, and I guess hearing that message over and over and over again just makes us feel like money is scarce and we're never going to have enough to build the life that we want. So for me personally, I've spent a lot of time trying to untrain myself around that message and realize that money can be really abundant, and it doesn't have to be this thing that we protect and continually reserve or save, but it can be something that we can use to propel ourselves forward and build the life that we want.
Absolutely. And on that note, looking back to when you were younger and looking at your life now, what's been the key points of difference when it comes to how you manage money now?
That's another great question too. I think there are a lot of beautiful parts to the messages that the previous generations have kind of pushed to us about money. They really taught us the value of $1 and looking after all of the things that our money can buy. And I've been able to take some of those messages forward with me in my life as an adult. So I do try and spend quite intentionally. And if I do own something, I do try and take care of it, repair it where I can, as opposed to just constantly replacing. But I think there's a whole other side that maybe the previous generations didn't have the tools at the time, or it wasn't a common message. And that was using what we have now to build more for our future. I think there's a very common formula in the generations before. It was you save, you buy a property. If you have children, you try and to send them to a good school. And that was kind of where your money was being directed to. For me personally, some of the, the mindsets that I've tried to adopt in my life is how can I, in my 20s, build the life that I want in my 30s and 40s, as opposed to waiting to I retire to then enjoy the money that I have.
That's such a good point, Vanessa. I've been thinking about that myself over the last few years, and what's the point of saving all this money?
Exactly.
And then you don't actually do anything with it.
100%.
What's the point?
Yeah. I mean, there is obviously some value to saving and putting it in an account that's going to grow a balance with some interest. But I think you need to be really intentional and have a bit of a long-term goal, which will help you make some better and more informed decisions about how we can kind of turn that income into wealth down the track. And for me, that's started with just my bank account. What bank account am I using? Is it a high yield savings account, or is it just a general account where the interest is pretty nominal or next to nothing? And then where I'm trying to build my wealth, it's looking at what investments are growing and at what rate are they growing, and can I personally put my money towards those investments instead of just a basic savings account. And that all comes with having confidence in yourself, being financially literate, and just trusting in your ability to prioritize your financial strategy moving forward. Yeah.
And you speak about intentional spending. Like what does that mean to you? What does that involve? Because not everyone is familiar with that concept.
Yes, definitely. I just think it's crazy, the world that we live in today. There is almost no friction for when you want to purchase something. Like if you're going down to the shops, all you need to do is pull out your phone, scan your face, and that item is yours. So we live in this world where everything is so accessible to us that we're not actually thinking about the purchases that we make. And that's obviously by design. Businesses want to make that purchase easy for you. But I think there is another side that we're missing, which comes from intentional spending. I really believe in the idea of aligning our spending habits to our values and then also to our needs and our wants. For me, intentional spending looks like not restricting our money, but making sure that when we do spend, we do make a purchase, that it is aligned with either a need that we have or something that is going to bring us joy and happiness in our lives. And that looks different for everybody. Yeah.
And it's obviously this ongoing conversation between, is it a need or is it a want?
Yeah. And it is so okay to have a want and a need at the same time too. But where I think we tend to have like a bit of a downfall is when it fits neither of those categories and it's more of an impulse buy, or we're using our money to kind of mask an emotional challenge that we're working through. For example, you might go and buy something when you're feeling a little bit lonely, or maybe you're feeling a bit empty and you think that that item is going to kind of like address that issue for you. And then you buy it and you realize that it hasn't really moved the dial at all on how you feel. I think that's where, for me, the unintentional spending becomes more of a challenge that might hinder your progress or building your wealth in the future.
So what you're saying is that emotional buying isn't necessarily going to serve your needs. It could actually be a hindrance rather than something that benefits you.
Yeah, definitely. I think a big portion of intentional spending is understanding why you're spending in the first place. Like what's driving you to buy that item, and just being able to sit with it if it's not a need or a want, and find another alternative to address that emotional gap that you're having. If it is loneliness, for example, like could you call a friend instead of jumping into your shipping cart and putting in your credit card details? Yeah, it's about finding those small swaps, which comes with being quite in tune with who you are as a person and your drivers for spending.
Because that I guess desire to spend impulsively, it's in all of us.
Definitely.
And if we don't like take notice of it, if we don't sort of address it, and like, the emotional side of us can take over, and we can find ourselves spending money that we don't have.
100%.
And then we're trying to find a way to get out of debt, but we put it upon ourselves. We did it to ourselves. Like we've got to have financial boundaries. I mean, that being said, like what does financial boundaries mean to you? Like how would you explain financial boundaries to your customers, for example?
Yeah, that's such a great question. For me, financial boundaries looks like being able to say no to an expense or a purchase that just doesn't align with who you are as a person. I think it's very easy to fall into a pattern where you're spending for the approval of other people, or to project an image or an identity of yourself that isn't your reality. So for me, boundaries would look like being able to say no to instances where you feel like you're spending for those reasons.
Interesting. And I wanted to ask, going back to the whole parents and money, I guess, situation, because parents want to give us the best advice, but unfortunately their advice isn't always ideal. Sometimes, and look, it's not to say that their advice is completely wrong. Some of the things they say are beneficial, but some things are not. And wanted to know, did you follow the advice, or did you come up with your own philosophy about how you should look after and manage money as an adult?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they always have our best interests at heart, and they are trying to push really positive messages that are going to build us up for our future. But there are definitely a few things that I've taken from my parents, but a lot of what I know about money today and my relationship with money is lessons that I've learned along the way myself. And it's been the product of sitting down, understanding where I am spending money and where I probably should cut some of that spending, and just having financial goals that help drive me towards where I want to be in the future. So for me, I've taken parts from my parents, like being quite intentional about how I spend my money, being quite disciplined in when and where I use my money. But I think the other part that was missing in the messages that I received growing up is being able to grow my money and my wealth and use that to build the life that I want, and having those strategies in place. I think I had parents that were quite risk adverse when it came to money growing up, and conversations like investing or understanding different types of bank accounts was just not a conversation that we had in our household. So working in the industry around finance has very luckily exposed me to all of these different strategies that are available to help me grow my wealth. And it's something that I've been trying to prioritize that I just didn't receive that information growing up.
As you started to learn more about how to manage your money confidently, what are some of the strategies you applied to your own life to sort of break away from the norm and, I guess, sort of think outside the box in terms of how you save money? Because there's so many strategies out there that people share about how you save money. Maybe the question I'm asking here is, what are the ones that specifically you found most effective when it comes to your own life? Yeah,
definitely. I think when I first started to be a bit more aware of my relationship with money, I had this very restrictive mindset. I thought I had to save every single dollar and maybe miss out on some of the opportunities and experiences that would make me happy. But as I've developed my financial literacy, I've realized that restriction is not the answer, because it really does just lead to overspending in the future because you feel like you're being deprived. So one of the biggest shifts for me has been from reactive spending to quite intentional spending. So I like to sit down, review where I am spending money, and put together a budget which kind of details the needs that I have and then the ones that I have in my life. And I put aside a portion of the money that I do make to those wants that I have in my life, to those experiences that are going to make me happy. Because I think that's important in building a sustainable relationship with money. One of the other biggest shifts that I've made as well is paying myself first. So when my money comes in, I automatically save, I automatically invest, and then I use the rest to fund my lifestyle with my living expenses. And then I put a portion aside for that one spending. And I think having that mindset shift of being able to spend what's left has been absolutely game changing, as opposed to having it reverse and just saving whatever's left at the end. Yeah, I think they're the two biggest transformations that I've made in my early 20s around my relationship with money that have been really impactful.
Incredible. And I think, what I've seen is that most people, they spend their money and then they have a little bit left over, and then it's like, what did I do with all that money? Like I've got nothing left. Like it's always a challenge. And that's where I guess the intentional spending comes in. It's taking responsibility for how you spend your money. And look, as individuals, we're like, I know I shouldn't have bought that. I shouldn't have wasted my money on that. But it's like, how do you counteract that? Because as humans, we are driven. Our decisions are often they're emotional. So we spend based on our emotions. Like, is it a money problem or is it an emotional problem?
100%. Yeah. Oh, I definitely resonate with that. I think our relationship with money is quite fueled by emotion, and we need to be able to have the discipline and the self-awareness to understand when we are doing our spending out of that place, as opposed to being quite rational and trying to meet our needs and our wants.
And you're an accountant, yet your content tends to be more human and emotional. Do you think being good with money is about psychology, or is it about numbers?
Yes, I think the numbers definitely matter, but a lot of the way that we feel about money comes from our behavior. I think our spending habits are almost like a mirror for us. If we're feeling maybe a little bit insecure, or we're feeling empty or unhappy, that is going to channel through to our spending habits too. I see so many examples of people who will kind of like feel a little bit lonely. Maybe they jump on social media and they're getting an advertisement for like a skincare product or an item of clothing that might make them feel more beautiful in the moment. And of course, like getting that item might help you feel a bit happier or great in the moment. But as soon as we have that item, that feeling kind of subsides for us and we're back to how we felt from the beginning. It doesn't really solve the emotional challenge that we are working through. You can earn a high income in your life, but if you don't have the right financial habits and a level of discipline about you, I think it's going to be very difficult to get ahead financially. And it's about having that base and understanding why you're spending in the first place. And I guess being able to address some of those challenges without needing to spend money in the first place. So yeah, I think it is very important to know what you're spending and know where your money is going from a financial and numbers perspective. But I think the behavioral aspect of money is far more significant.
Absolutely. And I think one of the strategies that I use personally is that if I know I can't afford something that I really, really want, instead of splurging and going, what, I'm just gonna buy it anyway. I write it down. I keep a record of it. Maybe it's something that I've seen on Amazon. For example, some audio equipment for my podcasting studio. And I'm like, I'll save this and then I'll plan out how I'm going to get the money for this product.
That is fantastic. And I'm so glad to hear that you do that, because one of the small strategies that we can do in our day-to-day is just delay the purchase. Like if we decide we want something today, write it down somewhere. It's like wait 72 hours or create a wish list on a platform. And if you still
like Amazon.
And if you still want that item after 3 days or a month, then you have confidence that you truly want that item, and you will do little things here and there to make that item or that purchase possible, as opposed to just scrolling and saying, okay, I really want this item right now. And then it becomes an impulse purchase. And that item's probably going to sit on your shelf somewhere and you're not going to really value the item for what it is. But yeah, it's amazing that you actually like decide what you want and then you have a strategy in place to get it. So by the time you do have it, you really value that piece.
For sure. And what's the one financial habit that people could focus on this year that would move the needle the most?
That is such a good question. So many strategies come to mind.
I like to ask the hard-hitting questions, Vanessa.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many strategies that would move the needle. But if I was going to pick just one that is low effort and is not so mentally draining, it would be to automate your savings and your investments first. So when you do get paid on the day, you can set up an automatic transfer from one account to a savings account that automatically goes in, and you just don't need to think about it. And that when you're making that transfer to that account, that you're actually building for your future. And it is like, it's mindless for you, that's working in the background, and you can have some peace of mind that you're not just going through life without a plan, that you're actually building for your future.
No, you've got to have the plan.
Definitely.
And there is a saying, was it plan the plan, work the plan? I can't remember.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that one. But at the end of the day, it's like you work hard for the money that you do earn. So I think you need to value yourself enough to have some strategies in place. And the strategies you have don't need to be this like sophisticated system that traders are out there using.
Really?
Like,
it doesn't have to be sophisticated?
It definitely doesn't have to be. It just needs to be something that is sustainable and something that you can consistently do. And that is a perfect example of something that can just go on in the background without it being too much of a mental burden for you, but still going to have the impact, the intended impact.
And how can people who do not have a particularly high income get ahead financially and create greater financial stability?
I think this is such a relevant question in today's climate, because inflation has been so high. Property prices feel out of reach for a lot of younger people. And I think there's a lot of like negative sentiment around being able to achieve financial freedom in this climate. So I think broadly getting ahead financially falls under two strategies. The first one would be increasing your income, and the second one would be minimizing your expenses. And ideally, you'd be working on both of them simultaneously. If you're in a chapter of your life where you feel like the first strategy of increasing your income is just out of your reach, then you need to focus on what you can control, which is your spending. So if I could just give one piece of advice that would help people get ahead on lower incomes, is pay attention to what you're spending. Spend 1 or 2 months just tracking your expenses and understanding where you might be spending a little bit more unnecessarily, and work towards making those small but consistent changes to your spending habits. And yeah, it can be daunting to put a microscope over your spending habits, but I think that will truly move the needle, because it will highlight to you where you can make those small changes that can be pushed towards building your future. I highly, highly recommend having a budget in place and being able to track your actual spending to what you did budget for. Not because I want people to feel restricted in their money, but just to create some accountability for your spending.
And on that note, how often should people review their financial budget?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the person's style. I think the easiest frequency to reviewing your spending would be within the same cycle that you get paid if you have a salary or wages kind of job. For me personally, I like to review it on a monthly basis. Yeah,
I think that's the norm. Yeah, I think that's achievable, because if you're reviewing it every day, that's a bit over the top.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the Will to Win show, Vanessa. I was just blown away with all the wisdom you had to share about how people can manage their money more effectively and be able to save money and not waste it on unnecessary things and spend intentionally.
Thank you so much for having me. And if I could leave your audience with just one last message, it would be, you work so hard for your money, so you should use it to build a life that you want.
Wow. I couldn't agree more. That's such an amazing insight. And if people want to connect with you on social media, how would they go about it?
Yes, good point. So my Instagram and TikTok handle is @Vanessa Ziino, and that is VanessaZiino.